Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to What They Teach You in High School. Today we are talking about presidential power and people. And really we're going to look at kind of three main topics. We're going to talk about the presidential power of the veto, the president's administration, and then we're going to talk about a category called the bureaucracy. If you remember one thing about bureaucracy, it's that bureaucracy was actually the winning word in the 2009 Ports Club Lodge Elks Club's annual middle school spelling bee. Congratulations, Eric. Welcome back to What They Teach You in High School. Okay, so remember the last time we talked about the veto? I mentioned that every president's favorite Jimmy John's sub sandwich is a veto. It's actually spelled V-E-T-O. Kind of a spelling bee vibe today in this video. But if you recall from this video here, where we talked about how a bill becomes a law, you'll remember that the final step in the process is that the president can either sign that bill and make it a law, or they can veto it. And I did not share with you what that meant in the last video because your guys' attention span is about as long as that of an ant. Respectfully. So essentially the power of the veto is to nullify what the legislature had just passed. So remember, each bill has to go from the House to the Senate or from the Senate to the House. They both have to pass the same bill. But ultimately, the president gets the final say, and they can either approve of that bill or they can say, no thanks, which sometimes they do. And now totally jumping to an unrelated yet related topic, the president isn't just making these decisions by him or herself, someday herself, folks. They have a team of individuals we would call the president's administration. We're gonna take a look at that next. Let's get into it. What we would call the president's administration is what we also would refer to as the executive offices of the president. Some of those executive offices are the Office of Management and Budget, the National Security Council, the Office of the Vice President, and the White House staff. And essentially each of those different groups serves at the behest of the president in order to make sure that all the different moving parts of the government keep on trucking forward. Obviously, each of those different executive offices, they have their own staff, but some of the key staff within the White House would be the National Security Advisor, the President's Chief of Staff, as well as the press secretary. The reason that I mentioned the press secretary is that oftentimes you'll recognize that person because, well, they manage the press. They interact and share what the president's thinking on certain topics. And typically they try and go out in front of the press on a consistent basis, maybe daily, maybe weekly, hopefully more than monthly. So that's essentially what the president's executive offices do. They're managing all the day-to-day operations within the White House and everything that gets close to the White House, things like the vice president. The next thing that we need to talk about are what we would call independent agencies. And these independent agencies technically work underneath the president. Remember, the president is the chief executive officer of the government. Check out this video here, if you didn't already, to learn what the other roles of the president are. But in addition to the people that work directly for the president within the executive office of the president, we also have independent agencies. And when I mention independent agencies, I gotta bring up the B word. Not that B word, you dirty-minded little punks. Bureaucracy. Remember Eric, the sixth grader who won the 2009 spelling bee? He knows all about bureaucracy, or at least all the different vowels that pop up. Look at that thing. That's a beast of a word. So these independent agencies, or the bureaucracy, are things that you're also familiar with. Things like the FBI, the CIA, NASA, that's an independent agency. They have missions and objectives that span across and outside of the elected president's purview. Purview, that's a big word. The reason that we have a bureaucracy is because it allows for people to remain serving the government longer than an elected official might serve the government. Remember, some of these people get elected every 2 years, and if you get kicked out, well, maybe you didn't build a lot of skills. And oftentimes, the bureaucracy kind of comes with some negative connotations. So let me quickly list for you some of the pros and some of the cons of the bureaucracy. Instead of these positions being elected, we create a system where these positions are appointed. And oftentimes these people who are appointed then hire staff who remain permanently. This creates stability as well as expertise within our government agencies. Additionally, these bureaucracies often have significant amounts of accountability. Typically, when you think of bureaucracy, you think of something like a hierarchy where people are working up and down the ladder of control, making sure that your boss and their boss and their boss and their boss are all satisfied. Because remember, the final boss is the president. And if the president ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. But the final point about stability is also one of those things where, your greatest strength is also your strongest weakness. You ever heard that saying before? And so some of the cons and some of the reasons that bureaucracy gets a negative connotation is that oftentimes people say that there's a lot of red tape because it's not just like one person can make a decision. Typically, they got to set it up the chain of command. And so it takes a long time for things to get accomplished or approved. And oftentimes politicians brag about cutting through red tape. Because everyone's got to check with their supervisor and their supervisor's supervisor and their supervisor's supervisor's supervisor, people can't just say, I can help you out this one time. And that's another reason that oftentimes bureaucracy gets a bad rap. They can't just make it up as they go, and they definitely can't make an exception for you. They don't even know you. They don't even know me. They wouldn't even make an exception for me. And because they really aren't willing to make any exceptions for people, and oftentimes in our regular day-to-day lives, people are always making exceptions for people, oftentimes people complain about a lack of personability with these bureaucracies. And there you have it, folks. There's a brief overview of the powers of the president as well as some of the people that work for the president, including that dirty word bureaucracy. It's a doozy to spell, and it's an even doozier doozy to doozy anything. Thanks again for watching What They Teach You in High School. Hey, as always, make sure you smash that subscribe button, and hit the little bell so you know I'm coming next time. Thanks again for watching What They Teach You in High School. Make sure you're sharing these with your family, with your friends, and most importantly, with your high school social studies teacher. Hey, we'll see you next time on What They Teach You in High School. Peace and blessings.